Hola. Today, we interview one of Latam's early stage investors, Platanus Ventures, based out of Chile and now across Latam. This is the first interview where we've had two interviewees on at the same time. And this was an interview recommended by founder Marcos from Bircle, a phygital startup they incubated. We get into what Platanus Ventures is, building the Latam markets and how they're different, and how they would have expanded much faster across the region, not just Chile, if they did it all over again. If you like this interview and want to support this channel for us to do more interviews, don't forget to hit the subscribe button below. Well, good morning from Austin, Texas. What time is it over there for you guys?
It's afternoon already in Chile.
Ooh, and in
Here it's 9:21.
okay, all right. So we're more like in terms of time. So today I'm super pleased to have Rogelio and Paula Enei in today's show. We're going to talk about Platanus Ventures and what they do. So love to have a 15-second background of each of you guys, and obviously ladies first. So Paula, please.
Thank you, Tech, for having us. So my background, basically, I studied psychology, but didn't want to do that for work. So I built a startup, which did okay, not extraordinary. So stopped doing that. And after building a startup, I worked in Startup Chile, which is a government-run acceleration program. It's the first government-run acceleration program in the world. And I was there for about 3 years. And in those 3 years, I worked with give or take 500 companies and got to know a lot of founders. There's a lot of volume in Startup Chile. So of course, not all of the startups do well because it's the nature of the industry, but the ones that always did do well, or most of the time did well, were the ones that had a technical founder in their team. So because Startup Chile is a government policy, it couldn't have like a specific thesis for investment. So I really wanted to build something that had that specific like thesis supporting technical founders. And that's how I came about my co-founders, and we built Platanus Ventures, which I can tell you about later.
And Roger, yourself?
Yeah, so I started working at the hedge fund industry, investing in public equities. I was there for 3 years for a local hedge fund here in Mexico, and then I quit to build a company. That was 2019, and we started what is now one of the leading buy now, pay later companies in Mexico. We were backed by YC, Excel, other investors, and after 4 years operating as CEO and founder, I stepped down, and then now I'm supporting founders here at Platanus Ventures, which is the leading accelerator program in Latin America.
I don't hear psychologists and hedge fund commonly. I think in pretty unique backgrounds. So Paula, can you tell me more about Platanus Ventures and the investments that you make, and kind of what makes Platanus different and unique?
Sure. So we're an acceleration program. We are building a community. That's like the main thing that we're building. And the community has the following thesis. So we invest in Latin American founders, Spanish speaking, who are building digital products, and where at least one of the founders in the founding team can build the product himself. So they have, the skills to develop technology. They could either be software engineers or whatever, as long as they can code, and they can also build the team, the technology team. We've done about 60 investments till date. We started like roughly 3 years ago. And yeah, that's Platanus Ventures in a nutshell. We've done a bunch of investments that have become very, the companies have become very big in little time. So we got to, kind of build the name of our brand and what we're doing with the initial investments that we made in 2020 and 2021.
And Roger, from your perspective, as an understanding, I think you're a founder that actually you're an ex-founder that kind of joined Platanus Ventures and decided to help out. What, in your perspective, makes Platanus different and interesting?
Yeah, I think first what I will say is that capital, even though maybe it doesn't look like on the press, but capital in Latin America is pretty scarce. And Paula forgot to mention, but those 60 investments on 3 years basically made us the most active investors in Latin America. And we are actively supporting local founders who usually have a very hard time raising money. And we are one of the very few folks in Latin America that actually support people at the earliest stages, like on idea stage, just a team of very talented people. We do that. And I was one of those founders. So I think I empathize really well with that story. And I'm super happy to be helping other founders like I was 4 years ago.
Kind of drill down into that a bit, and this is kind of an open question, Paolo or Roger can kind of take it. If I had to ask you one thing, the Latin American market, Roger was saying, was underserved. Early stage was underserved. I think it sounds like technical teams were underserved as well. What do you hope to build in Latin America? What does Platanus, I guess, what is the mission? Is it trying to have great teams? Is it trying to solve local problems? In your words, what do you think? What is the mission?
Yeah. So we think Latin America can be improved, like the lives of people in Latam can be improved through technology. So that's like putting it in very simple, but there's a lot of problems to be solved in the region. And there's a great amount of internet penetration in the region as well. So there's a lot of momentum right now to support people who want to build digital companies that can attend these unattended markets. So that's like the wider why of what we're building. But specifically, as I said before, we have a thesis where we invest in technical teams. And the reason behind that is, so as Roger said, capital is scarce, but what is scarcer is technical talent. So people who are like great developers, they want to work for FANG companies in the US and access those salaries. And it's hard to compete in LATAM unless you're a great like technical founder and people feel admiration towards you and would want to work in your team just because it's you and because they're excited about what you're building. So that's the kind of founder that we're looking to support and invest in. And also, I would say like there's a lot of people fighting, like all of the investors that there are in LATAM are kind of fighting to invest in the further series, like Series A, Series B, maybe Series C. But there's not enough people kind of in the origination of companies, right? Being the first ticket and, just having the possibility of building a company is still difficult. So that's why we're focusing in idea stage or the earliest stage of Latin American digital companies right now.
And then another follow-up question that is, I actually, my own kind of funds before, we didn't invest in Latin America companies. I'm trying to think. We didn't. Are there lots of similarities between kind of Latin American countries? So Chile, Argentina, and then I guess Central America as well. Are there mostly similarities, and you can kind of when you build or a company builds, is it kind of one market or no? There are multiple smaller markets. Yeah. They all might be Spanish speaking, but very different behaviors.
Yeah, no, definitely. Maybe Roger, you could take this one if you want.
Yeah, what I can say, what we've seen founders is that there are some countries that are very alike. So for instance, Mexico and Colombia, I would say they are one of the most alike countries, if you will. But there are other countries like, for instance, Chile, which is a very highly developed country, if you will. And if you compare very basic things like poverty levels compared to Mexico, that makes many things very different. How public services work and how people really behave in some ways are very different. And what we've seen is some founders actually have to adapt more than they think when they export their products to Chile or to Mexico and then to other countries. But I would say like most of the South American companies try to come to Mexico and they try to adapt the product to Mexico because it's a very large market. It's the largest market in Spanish-speaking Latin America.
How big is the Mexican market, population-wise?
So it's a 1.2 trillion economy, and then it's 130 million people, which is one of the most populous countries in the continent, really, even larger than Canada, similar to Canada.
Okay. So the mass is there. So it makes sense a lot of companies would actually go kind of try to capture that market because perhaps, yeah, Chile and Argentina just isn't, in other parts of Central America, just isn't kind of big enough. Yeah.
That's right, exactly.
Cool. Yeah, because we support, and if we've done interviews with Africa, and that's a 1 billion population market, but there are very different behaviors across all the different countries, and there's 50 different countries, right? So it's actually quite challenging, and it's also quite interesting at the same time. Switching gears a little bit, and this is kind of where it's kind of, I like to call it the therapy. So Paula, as a psychologist, you might kind of appreciate this part where you kind of take a step back and I reflect, and you can reflect. Yeah, what are your current challenges in building kind of Platanus Ventures? What are some of the current challenges or past challenges that you've had, and what have you done to solve it? And challenges, I mean, how is it to build a firm, and what are some of the difficulties in building out Platanus Ventures?
Sure. So I would say that building a VC firm, if we were that in Latam, is difficult because on one side you have like where the money comes from, right? Like family offices and high net worth individuals. Not all of them, more and more, but not all of them are familiar with the industry, and they kind of freak out on how risky it is. So you do have to kind of have like a well thought out strategy and storytelling in order to have these people come on board with something that can have this amount of impact on one side. So that's always a challenge, and I think that's changing, and it's like more evolved now than before, but there's still a lot to go forward. And on the other hand, you have to find the best investments, and of course they are scarce. Like the best companies in Latam is it has a lot of problems, but there needs to be more people like on board on kind of building this kind of company. So you always have to build a brand and kind of be very selective from the beginning with the people that you're inviting to join what you're building. So on one hand, those are your portfolio companies, right? You kind of you're gonna mess up at some point, but you have to do the best effort you can in order not to, and kind of because those people will make other people like them gravitate towards you, and that's how you'll get the best deals, right? And also building your team. So I don't think it's that different for us. At least we're actually like a tech-based investor. So we do a lot with software. We were 3 people leading this for a long time, and that's because a lot of the stuff that we do is automated. One of my co-founders is a software engineer, and there's like a lot of tech in this. So we have to also get like the best tech people in. We have to get the best visiting partners like Roger on board, and kind of be very meticulous with what you're building in that sense. And I think that's a constant challenge. So like in therapy wise, because all of that sounded like it was easy, but it really wasn't. Like therapy wise, I would say, I think we probably could have been a bit more aggressive with our expansion. So we started off in Chile. In 2020, all we did was Chile. And then 2021, we did a bit of like Mexico. And then it's like, why didn't we do that sooner? Like we should have done that sooner for sure. Bring Roger on earlier on, kind of build the office that we have there sooner. I'd say like just avoid like whatever, like imposter syndrome, if you want to call it, and just do it and be like more aggressive with that. Yeah, I don't know if that makes sense to you, Roger, as well.
Yeah, so Roger, I'm gonna, before you answer that question as well. So I think I'm gonna take what Paula said about bringing in talent, and should have kind of brought in talent sooner, which I assume she meant you. So and yeah, what in your perspective, like why then? What makes Platanus Ventures, and why go into the venture side? Because equally, your talent, you've built startups before. You could have just said, no, I just want to build startups, right? And have this kind of exciting founder life. What compels you to, I think, to move into kind of the venture space?
Yeah, so it really had to do with the story of our company. So our company is doing super well right now. It's scaling, and my co-founder now it's leading it successfully. And I was extremely burnt out, and that's why I decided to step down basically and take a pause and then reflect on what I was going to do next for my next decade. And I was always fortunate to be close to the Platanus Ventures team. The story is a little fun, but well, it's funny because we applied to the first cohort and they didn't accept us. Then we got into YC, we raised a bunch of money, and we end up doing pretty well. But when I always met Platanus Ventures founder, I was always impressed, and they were like super great people and always admired those founders. And when I stepped down from my company, basically I wanted to do something to support founders like me, and I was fortunate that Platanus Ventures was looking for a visiting partner already, so it was like a perfect match, if you will.
That's a good kind of full circle, right? So in the sense, like Paula, you were saying, like you obviously you're a fund. That's the economic kind of vehicle or behavior, but you also use the word community, right? So you're building a community, and whether they are coming in as a portfolio company or as a business partner, you want the best talent in the community.
Yes, for sure. And I think you can't make a mistake with people. Like maybe you can make a wrong investment in economic terms, hopefully not, but that can happen. But you can't let the wrong people in what you're building, especially at this stage. So yeah, like I would say when I look at our portfolio and the founders that are in our portfolio, as Roger said, I think like they have in some ways kind of the same DNA. Like they're different, they're doing different things, but they're very similar in certain aspects. And yeah, that kind of makes me feel that we're not making wrong decisions in the sense of the people that we're making come on board.
Fantastic. Well, thank you for spending time. This is all, I'm afraid, this is a fascinating chat, but this is all the time that we have. So thank you again for your time. I hope to talk to you soon.
Yeah, thank you so much, Tech.
Thanks for having us, Tech.